Hello everyone, good evening and dober večer vsem. Samo eno začetno obvestilo. Ta pogovor bo potekal v angleščini, tako da bomo kar nadaljevali v angleškem jeziku, ker smo trenutno na mladinski izmenjavi Rural skupaj z mednarodnimi partnerji v okviru programa Erasmus+. So hello everyone, my name is Anja Fortuna and I'm part of the team organizing the Erasmus Youth Exchange Rural together with Rural Youth Europe. Slovenian Rural Youth Association is really happy that we are able to organize first ever event online for 1 week in a format of European rally. And today we decided to spread this message throughout social media. So even though we were already meeting since Sunday, we are live streaming this event so more people can hear about some interesting ideas on the content of labor market in rural areas and rural competencies. Today, the panel will be moderated by Iristiina Heinonen. She's board member of Rural Youth Europe. And we have 3 amazing speakers that I'm lucky enough to know. And I know their stories. I know what they're working on. And I'm really excited that you will also hear their stories, what they're passionate about, what they know, because I can say that, yeah, they really have a lot to say. And we have 3 amazing panelists. Polona Globočnik, she's a former international person at Slovenian Rural Youth Association. She comes from a family farm, but now she's working in Brussels for Kokošar, one of the biggest, I'll say, lobby agriculture organizations. So it's going to be interesting to hear her view on how her competences from the one that she got in Slovenian rural area and her farm, how is that helping her in her work in Brussels. Second speaker is Drejc Kokošar. He's from Idrija 2020, which is an organization working on cultural heritage. He comes from actually my hometown, so I do know their work very well. And even though their focus is industrial heritage, cultural heritage, they recently started working on rural projects as well. And then our final speaker that is live with us today is Aljaž from Hiša Mandrova, which is, I'll say, a very interesting project in my view, but for him and Eva is not a project, it's a way of life, and that's how I would describe it. For me, they're very enthusiastic people that came from, how to say, a global city into a very, very small village. And to simplify it, in my views, they really started to live with nature. So they went back to nature. And we will have 2 video inputs by Franc Bogovič. He's a Slovenian member of the European Parliament, working a lot on rural issues. And Swann, he's the Minister of Health for Northern Ireland, but he's also the former chairman of Rural Youth Europe and the former president of Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster. And to not prolong this, I'll give the floor now to Iristiina, who will be moderating this panel.
Thank you, Anja. I would also like to welcome all our panelists and also the viewers on Facebook and social media. So welcome. And yes, my name is Iristiina Heinonen and I'm the board member of Rural Youth Europe. I'm representing Group 3 in Rural Youth Europe board, which means Nordic countries. But let's go to our topic today. First, I would like to give a floor for Drejc. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name right or wrong. Would you like to please tell me if I'm totally... Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Iristiina. My name is Drejc, so yeah, almost right, but thank you for inviting. Okay.
Okay. Yes, now we have a beautiful view on our screens. First, I would like to ask you one question. If you would like to tell us something about your organizations and what's your main line of work there, would you please like to start with that?
Okay, yes, thank you for the word. So I'm Drejc, I'm the representative of the ID20 Institute and IDRIA 2020 Association. So we come from Western Slovenia, from a small town called Idrija, which was in the past mining center, but developed in a little bit different area now. It's quite industrial based, but with a rich cultural heritage. We are also UNESCO town. And we already saw the opportunity about 10 years ago. Then we started an association, which was really like voluntarily based at first, but then slowly grew into a more important organization with 5 employees. And we also established ID20 Institute 2 years ago, where we want to pursue our goals. And this is mostly to develop and safeguard cultural heritage in the rural and peripheral areas. But we don't want to focus only on the safeguarding, but mostly on new approaches, young approaches, fresh, modern approaches to the cultural heritage that would combine social entrepreneurship, marketing, architecture, and community engagement, youth engagement, so that we don't see cultural heritage as the old thing, but something new, modern. So we need to look at the cultural heritage as a sustainable solution that can involve community in the rural areas in this case, because a lot of rural areas in Europe are facing out-migration of young people. And cultural heritage is one of solutions, how to tackle it and how to bring new opportunities.
Thank you. Very interesting themes and topics. I would like to also ask you, how do you see the role of heritage for improving the labor market in rural areas?
So first of all, it's important that we see cultural heritage not something only from the past. Of course, cultural heritage is something from the past that we have it in the current time, actual time, but we always need to see future out of it. And it's also very important that we don't see only tangible part of it, but also intangible customs, rituals, and that we see people in the center, so humans in the center of it. And in this way, we see it a little bit more broader, holistic, which might be also a little bit more complex to tackle. So you need a little more knowledge and so on. So first of all, it's important that, as I already mentioned, you need to be creative and modern. But there is so many opportunities. For example, one of the most, of course, important is tourism. But I would really like to emphasize this. Tourism after COVID-19 is not the same as before. And if one thing that was shown by this pandemics is that we cannot really just put the tourism in focus. We need to focus on the creativity. We need to focus on the education, especially. You have, especially in rural areas, you have so many things that you can educate. And the first thing I would say when we talk about education is to think about cities, how to involve city people in these activities. Because the rural areas are facing out migration, and we need to attract people from cities. Cities are overcrowded. And this is one of the things that we need to do. And digitalization is a step towards this. But it's not just education, it's gamification, it's video games, for example, if you're talking for young people, it's architecture, new solutions that can be tackled. And cultural heritage is really like a very, very interesting way how to reach it. But not only urban people that you need to attract, that you need to think about this, but I think we also need to learn from urban areas. We should not avoid it. This is, I think, very common problem when we are thinking about rural areas. We are avoiding it, and we need to look for new solutions like, I mean, Netflix, Uber, or different platforms can be a competition. Of course, they are competition. We need to look at them as competition because we live in a global world, but they can be also an inspiration for new solutions. Whatever we want, rural areas will be more and more developed by urban people and urban approaches. And I think that's very important.
Thank you. That's very interesting point that we need to avoid like comparing only urban and rural. It's really important that we can also learn things from each other, and also like you mentioned, it's very interesting and important point in my opinion as well. Thank you. I was wondering, Anja, if now there is time for our video output, or are we continuing? Okay, yeah, great. So now we'll have a look at the video output we have already got. So I'll pass it on Anja again.
In the concept of smart villages, we speak about better infrastructure and more jobs in rural areas. So we provide better conditions for quality of life for elderly and young people. It's very important that, first of all, we complete infrastructure, communal infrastructure, health infrastructure, educational infrastructure, also cultural, sport infrastructure. In last days, we know very well how important it is that we have quality broadband connections. And the second role is to diversification of jobs in rural areas. All we agree that agriculture, forestry, and in last years also bioeconomy are basic jobs in rural areas. But this is not enough. We need jobs in rural areas, in tourism, jobs in healthcare, jobs in care for elderly people. We saw in COVID crisis that it's much safer for elderly people to stay in rural areas than to be in big houses in the cities. The next opportunity is also in energy sector. All we today speak about active consumers. It means that you produce and you sell electricity. And these are new jobs which are at all and first in rural areas. So the concept of the smart villages is the concept which will provide quality jobs of 21st century in rural areas. People who live in the rural areas are more connected with the nature. They more understand the process which are happening in the nature. And first, if they are born on the farm. Sometimes young people are surprised what it means. But at the end, they recognize that also people who work in other businesses, like people who are also hand worker, who are also hard worker. And usually people from rural areas are this. Especially if you work on the farm, you know many skills which are very useful, first of all in agriculture sector, but also in other jobs. So the skills of people who live in rural areas are very important, and employers like this. People who live in rural areas are, first of all, more connected in families. The second very important thing is that people in villages, they work together. They like to join to each other, to have fun, and also to work together. On the other hand, we recognize during the COVID crisis that life in rural areas is more healthy. I live in rural areas, and in last year and during the whole COVID crisis, I had no problem with health, and also it was easier to survive mentally than to be in this lockdown in big houses in big cities. The third thing, which is also very important, that I'm sure that it's much better for children to growing up in rural areas than in cities on concrete and on the road. So I think that living in rural areas is a big privilege. And through concept of smart villages, I'm sure that more and more people will recognize how quality life we live in rural areas. So the life in rural areas is a privilege.
Thank you. Interesting points as well in that video. We also discussed yesterday in our rally teams about the similar themes, and we end up similar conclusions as in previous mentioned. So Hiša, am I pronouncing your name right?
Hiša, Mandrova.
Hiša, okay.
and I'm Aljaž, so I'm half of it, half of the house.
Okay. I would like to ask you that, could you please tell us something about yourself and your story?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have to say thanks to Anja for inviting us to participate at this rally. And also I'm flattered to speak among all these great young minds focused on rural areas and development. Well, where could I start? We're actually a really weird bunch among you, I guess, because we're professionally, our career is in fine arts. We are both video artists, making exhibitions and also, commissioned videos. And we lived for quite a few years abroad, and then we decided that we want to grow our own food and that we want to have a house of our own. And so there was a opportunity to buy affordable land in a really remote part of Slovenia on the border with Croatia. And so, yeah, we were really idealistic at the time. So we said, okay, we're gonna buy it. We'll manage, because we are two people who see opportunities at every step we take. So for someone, for example, a brush covered former agricultural land that is slowly becoming forest is a problem. But for us, it was, an opportunity to use natural materials for our house renovations, and then to make space for a garden. And, we are really in an area now, situated in an area with a lot of precipitation and climate extremes. So we have to search for new methods to grow food to cope with climate change. So, you have the climate change, you have eroded and poor soils. and you have forest that is slowly taking over the agricultural land. So our answer at our project Hiša Mandrova is to find new solutions, mostly in the field of regenerative agriculture, on a small scale, implement it, see if it works. And because we are in this extreme climate, microclimate, we can say, okay, you know, that works. So you should come to our premises, to our place, to see it, how it works, to feel it. And then from all this perspective of the gathered knowledge, we organize workshops that mostly urban people who want to change their lifestyles to, you know, to live their dreams, to have a similar kind of premises, they come here and they can learn about it. So we organize basically two types of workshops, and one is like building with timbers, or let's say using wood for construction material, and the other workshop is more like regenerative self-sufficiency type of learning process. So we're utilizing social media to spread our message across, and yeah, we have quite some followers now. So we are using the sort of influencer teacher kind of business model approach. I hope that answered your question, Iristiina.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting to hear about that. You already mentioned that there were a couple of difficulties in your way, but I would like to ask you, what do you think, what kind of competencies do you think are needed in rural life?
Well, I think you have to be a jack of all trades. That's first and foremost, that you have to know a lot of things about, you know, from construction, growing your own food, but also social skills. You know, you need to be a genuinely kind human being to interact with local community, you know, that they can accept you, and that you know how to communicate with them. And then when you get to know people, they will help you. And that's, of course, also in Franc's video, he mentioned that, and that is really true, that people in rural areas work together a lot. And then from competences is like, yeah, you know, people really like to get their hands dirty these days. You know, we like to learn new things. A lot of people want to know more about, you know, different areas of so, you know, like biology, soil science, animals, it all comes together. And that is that's a really interesting the learning curve, you know, in this sort of, you know, being in a rural area, the learning curve can be really steep. You can learn a lot if you're open-minded. So open-mindedness is a personal quality that we endorse a lot, especially in our social media posts, because, you know, we're associated sometimes with rural areas, and people think, yeah, you know, sometimes they perceive rural areas as backwards. So our goal is also to really like state that we're open-minded, and that we endorse diversity in, you know, both the landscape and human landscape society.
Thank you for your answer to that question. Polona, can you tell us something about yourself and your story, maybe?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for the nice introduction, Anja. So like you said, I'm Polona, I'm 24 years old, and I'm coming from Slovenia, from a village close to Ljubljana. I grew up on a family farm where we were first focused on vegetable production, on potatoes and onions, and then later we switched to livestock. So today we have a poultry production, we have laying hens. When I was younger, I was maybe not that enthusiastic about farming, but somehow I ended up studying agriculture and business in Vienna. And then after during my studies, I was already very active in Slovenian Rural Youth Organization, where I also learned quite something. And then I, more or less through a coincidence, landed up in Brussels in, like Anja said, organization representing farming.
Thank you. We already talked a bit about differences between urban and rural areas, and I would like to know. Sorry, my internet connection is doing something weird, but yes, I would like to know what is the biggest advantage and challenge of living and working in rural areas if you compare it with your life in Vienna and Brussels? You mentioned that you had experience in both of those. So what do you think?
So I would say that a big advantage from my past, but it's somehow connected to rural areas, but also to the fact that I was growing up on a farm, was that I could observe my parents in their everyday life because they were both working at home. So I already learned a lot of things just by seeing them, how they work, or like by helping them a bit. And the other big benefit, which I think is in rural areas, that you are very connected to your surroundings. So you develop your social skills a bit better, I would say. You maybe are more careful how you speak with people because you know that you will still see them tomorrow. They are not just somebody that you pass by. And on the other side, I would say one experience I had in Vienna is that I just found out after living in a place for 2 years that my neighbor speaks Slovene. So there you are not that connected with others. And I would say that that's a big difference. But you also have a lot of benefits in the cities like public transport, education, and later probably also like work opportunities.
Yes, thank you. Even though you are now working and living in an urban area, you are still influencing and improving rural areas. So can you please explain us a bit more what you do and why is that so? Why are you still working with rural areas even though you now live in the city?
So I work as a policy advisor in Kokošar, which is an organization that represents farmers. On one side, like we are in touch with farmers or agriculture organizations from all over Europe on a daily basis, and we try to bring their problems, their ideas to the European institutions, and the other way around. If there is something going on in the European level, if there is some proposal, we consult the farmers and ask them what they think about it, and try to bring their hopes and their ideas to the European level. More specifically, I work on topics of pigs, poultry, and horticulture, which I'm connected more or less also from my home farm. Yeah.
Thank you. Anja, would we have now time for our another video input?
Yes, so now video from Robin Swann, who kindly took the time. Imagine that in a time of pandemic, health minister is quite busy. So we asked Robin Swann, and the interview this discussion was done by Lindsay Stewart, and she's chairwoman of Rural Youth Europe. So you're gonna hear a discussion between current and the past chairpersons of Rural Youth Europe. And They're a very interesting discussion that you will hear in the next 10 minutes.
Good evening, Robin. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
Thank you so much for giving up your time. We know you're a really busy man, but we really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us tonight as part of our first ever virtual online European rally. So if you'd just like to tell us a little bit about yourself, what your experience with rural life is, and with your own home rural youth organisation and Rural Youth Europe, that would be really great.
Well, Lindsay, I suppose just to put things into perspective, I'm currently the health minister here in Northern Ireland, but I think a lot of the skills that I actually rely on come from my time in rural youth organisations, both Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster and Rural Youth. I was president of our organisation here in Northern Ireland for 2 years. I then went on and joined the board and became chairman of Rural Youth Europe. I think it was 2008, 2010. So a lot of the experiences that I got from being a member of Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster from 12-year-old, working my way up through club committee structures, county committee structures, to our national organisation, and then through Rural Youth Europe, I think I've been able to actually bring into the job that I'm now doing. You know, I first elected to the Northern Ireland Assembly a number of years ago, coming off the back of an election at trying to think now, 2011. So not long after stepping down actually as chair of Rural Youth Europe, I entered politics here in Northern Ireland full time.
Very good. Then it's clear to see your progression and how your involvement with organisations have led you to the position that you're in now. Would you like to tell us just a little bit about how growing up in a rural area kind of got your interest in rural youth organisations and how you came to be involved and hold those positions?
Well, I think coming from I come from a Young Farmers Club family, so my uncles and all were involved in Kells and Connor Club, my local club here. So it was a natural progression. You know, I think when anybody in our family turned 12, you joined Kells and Connor Young Farmers. So that was the natural way of doing things. And again, it was about that social interaction and something to do in the rural community in Northern Ireland. But I think one of the things that we should always remember and often don't sell enough is the life skills that our organisations gives each of us. No matter where you fit in the structure, either of a club or a county national organisation or even international organisation, it's about learning to be part of a team, learning to be part of a committee, and being able to have those conversations, those ideas, and not be afraid to speak up and to speak out as well. And I think that's one of the, I suppose, the main skills that I was able to take from Young Farmers, Rural Youth Europe, into the current role that I'm doing now. Because we do, as an organisation, no matter where we are across Europe, provide those valuable life skills to our members, and no matter what age they are, about giving them that sense of self-esteem and that sense of purpose and belonging, and the ability to realise that you're part of something bigger as well. And you know, it's often the Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster, you know, that mantra that we always have. You know, you get out what you put in. So the more you put into an organisation, the more you put into your community, the more you will actually get out of it as well.
Thank you, Robin. It's so interesting to hear you say that and to hear you look back on your time in those organisations, both your home organisation and Rural Youth Europe, and sort of see the skills and the life experiences that has taught you and how that has stood you in good stead for the position that you're in now and the challenges you face during this really difficult time that we are currently navigating through. Is there any particular advice that you would give to some of the young people that might be attending the rally this week, on what you would say to them with regards to rural life or getting involved with their rural organisations?
Well, I suppose the first thing I will say, you know, it will be a challenging rally this year being virtual. My first rally was in the year 2000 in Wales. I still remember it. I still remember most of it. As of the other rallies I attended, I think I was looking back, from Northern Ireland 2004, Scotland 2005, Latvia 2006, Germany 2007, Switzerland 2008, Estonia 2009, and then Sweden in 2010. So look, all those rallies, all those events bring different memories, brought different friends, brought different experiences and challenges as well. But I think what they always did for me was to bring about that sense of understanding that no matter where young people are in their rural communities across geographical Europe, the challenges are the same, but the opportunities are the same as well. And it's our organisations that actually allow people to develop a lot of life skills that they will never have the chance to experience or gain through even a formal education setting. So from public speaking to group debating to the teamwork that goes on in many rallies and many other rural youth and young farmers events as well. Those skills about how we work together and how we achieve together are something that I believe are invaluable and something that is the core structure, the core lifeblood of our organisations.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, a lot of what we do at Rural Youth Europe is based on non-formal education, and the whole week this week is about recognising that, the skills that kind of non-formal education gives to us and provides us, and helping young people just really realise the opportunities that they have and the skills that they're learning through rural life and through being involved in their own home rural organisations and also Rural Youth Europe as well. So it's great that we can meet virtually. It's great that you and I can meet virtually now as well and prepare this for the rally. And we thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to share just a little bit of your experiences with rural life and rural youth organisations for everyone attending today. So I'd just like to thank you. And
thank you.
We'll leave you to it, get back to your busy life, and we hope that we will see you again with Rural Youth Europe activities in the not too distant future, hopefully in person. Well,
and I think that is the challenge that we all work for, no matter where we are, that we do get back to that vital interaction, the personal interaction that our organisations rely on. And it is about taking the appropriate steps and the appropriate measures, no matter what country you're in currently as well, so that we all can return to those in-person meetings, because that again is something was invaluable through Rural Youth Europe and through our own organisation as well, is about the camaraderie and the support that we give each other as members of our own organisations and of the wider organisation that is Rural Youth Europe.
Yeah, it is definitely a challenge right now that we meet only virtually, but at the same time, we should be very grateful that we do have these opportunities. I'm sure whenever you were chair, you maybe had different ways of keeping in touch. I'm sure virtual didn't feature so much in your Rural Youth Europe time, but it's good that we have it now. Yeah.
I think it was just as we said before we started the interview. I think our main communication point, apart from the in-face meetings at that point, was Skype, which was really just a telephone conference. And for sometimes it wasn't great. The connections weren't great, but it was better than email. So we did what we had to do, but we didn't have the luxury of Zoom meetings that so many of us have now become used to. But again, I don't think anybody on tonight or on this call would underestimate the value that does come about through face-to-face and in-person interactions as well.
Yeah, we are embracing the challenges, and I know so many people are saying, oh no, not another Zoom, but it is really good to be able to keep in contact, and there's so many benefits to it as well. So as you say, hopefully we'll get back to that physical contact that bonds us all so well in the not too distant future. But until then, we'll make the most of what we've got available to us.
Okay, Lindsay, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you so much, Ron. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Interesting discussion there. Yes, now we are back in the similar way than earlier. I would like to ask you all our panelists one question about the rural competencies. We already had a big talk about that, but I would like to ask you all, maybe Drejc, you can start. I would like to ask you, what do you think about the future competencies? What would be needed in their working life, but also in rural areas? And do you have some kind of tips or advice for our rally participants and our viewers? Because you all have very interesting backgrounds and very different experience. So do you have some kind of tips or advice? Drejc, would you like to start?
Yeah, maybe I would start with what I already mentioned. So it's these new skills that are coming from urban areas are also important in rural areas. Although, as Aljaž already mentioned, rural areas, it's very important that you also know some physical skills. I think this will stay. Also, people who are coming from the cities, bigger cities to rural area that are settling, they normally understand this. They normally see it as important. They don't see it as an obstacle, I would say. And this is important. But I would say that it's not enough to be to have only physical skills if we want to create something in a rural area.
Thank you. Aljaž, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I'd like to continue. I strongly agree with Drejc that some basic skills will stay, but there are two things that I would point out that goes for both younger and older populations, and that is to reduce your hand labor. So a skill to really think in a reductionist way. So to think like, how will I work less to make more profit or crops or whatever it is? So how to, not spend that much of, beginning investment, how to, save your labor costs, how to, these, really sort of entrepreneur sort of startup way of thinking. That is one thing that that we are working on a lot. So we are trying to really invent ways to have maximum results with the least amount of labor, whilst in reality, in rural areas, a lot of things are done traditionally. And that means, traditionally you would do certain things, and then you have to show that you're doing things, and, you have to sort of participate in all these, traditions that sometimes are just, looking for plain, knowledge-based science, or just rubbish, the way, for example, some soil is plowed, for example, it can be done differently. And that brings me to my second point, and that is biotech. And that is, biology is the strongest technology that will, save the future. I strongly believe in that. And so we have to educate ourselves more about the roles of microorganisms, the cycles of microorganisms in, how, for example, cow biome affects the grassland, and then how the grassland affects our health. And it's a lot in these connections that we still don't know. Even scientists are just discovering that stuff, and we have to keep up with this science. And because we're the one that will be testing it, and we're the one that can implement it in the end. So that would be my 2 points.
Thank you. Polona, then would you like to continue?
Yes, I very much agree with what the previous two speakers said, but I would come back to a point that I already mentioned before as well. I think that something that we in rural areas have, and something that is going to be more important, or more and more important even in the future, are the social skills. So even though you have a lot of technology, you can replace big parts of labor that has been done before. You still need to have, you need to know how to handle and how to talk with other people. So I think that on the countryside, like I said before, you talk to your neighbors, you know how to speak to other people, that they feel comfortable speaking to you. So I'm sure that somehow you care more how they are doing. You want to make sure that they, I don't know, if they have an accident, you help. So I think that that's something that will create a lot of added value in the future as well, and this something that we have on the countryside.
Thank you. You, Polona, mentioned the talking to neighbors, but I would also like to ask you, because you are contacted with mainly European level decision-making people. So I would like to ask you, how are their attitudes towards rural areas? How do they see rural areas? Do you have some kind of experience of their attitudes?
So I think like agriculture is a very big topic on the EU level, because it's like a high part of it is transferred to the European level. So there are many people working on agriculture, but they do not necessarily have a lot of experience in the field. And I'm very happy to see the interest and the enthusiasm about farming, but sometimes I really miss maybe some understanding for how farming is done in the reality. I think that a lot of things sound good on the paper, maybe even after doing some research, but in the field it's sometimes more, it's a bit harder, and there I would wish for some more understanding. But in general, I can say that it's good to see that people start to talk about agriculture and that they want to know where the food comes from.
Thank you. All very interesting points and important things. Now I'm looking at the time, and I would like to mention also, if our rally participants have some questions or thoughts, please tell them, and you are free to ask questions. You can put them into the chat box or raise your hand by Zoom, and then you can ask your question. Or you can just open your microphone and unmute yourself and ask your question if you have something on mind. Now is a great time to ask from our great panelists with different experiences some questions.
I have a question for Drejc. Is at the moment the legislation gives the possibility to have a new approach on cultural heritage, or is it very difficult to do something new?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Francisca, for your question. It's actually a very good question. I would say that policies, I mean, like European Union and United Nations and all world organizations right now understand the role of heritage. There is much of emphasis on it, but it's very easy to talk that you need to develop and so on. In reality, it's a little bit more difficult, because as soon as you tackle this area, you actually realize that cultural heritage is very difficult, because you are tackling different sectors. And it's not just museums. You need to tackle then also education system. You need to tackle entrepreneurial system and so on. So also when you're doing the solutions, you need to work in different way than, for example, franchise system is working, because you always need to look into your area for new solutions. And this makes it very, very difficult if you want to do it in this way. But an example, European Union did quite a lot of things. There was also a year of cultural heritage in 2018, which started many things going on. And there is more and more focus on this holistic approach. If you're interested, you can take a look on the European Union web pages. There is a framework for cultural heritage. I think it's like named like action plan, and it's a very, very detailed explanation what actually cultural heritage is in this modern sense. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have some more questions? Feel free to ask them. Just unmute yourself and talk if you have something on mind.
Then I'll ask a question. Okay, then I'll ask a question. And it's for Aljaž. And my question would be, it's been a few years now since you're in Hiša Mandrova. If you would go back in times, would you start things differently? Like, what would be an advice to someone that would decide to start having the same, I'll say, lifestyle as you?
Actually, it's just been 3 years since we moved here, and yeah, thanks for your question. Actually, it's been 3 years, and looking back, I think you just have to start doing things, and then your learning curve starts to become steeper and steeper, and then you discover new things, and then of course you see rooms for improvements, but you have to see your, let's say, mistakes or missed opportunities as the rooms for improving things that you can, you need not to dwell on the notion that oh my god, I could have done everything different, or I missed that or missed that. You have to say, okay, next time I'm doing it better. And actually, looking back, we both of us, we don't regret our decision, because it was a conscious decision that we want to move to rural area, and that we will, that we'll do our business here. So it was from the day one, the decision that together with us, our work is also moving to the rural area. So that's something that that really it's lifestyle. So things I wouldn't change. There are things I wouldn't change, and then there are things that need improvement, and that's always a good thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have some more questions?
Yes, hello. Polona, where do you see yourself in future?
I don't really know what to answer to that. I just started working in Drejc Kokošar half a year ago, and I don't really have any concrete plans for the future. Sorry.
Such a big question to have like immediately to answer. Thanks a lot for our panelists. It's been great discussion and great points, important things and interesting points of views. Thank you a lot from my side, and I think I'll pass it on Anja now.
Thank you. We are going to be finishing the live stream. So thank you for watching us on Facebook as well. Thank you to all the participants and all the speakers. It was really amazing hearing your answers, your stories, and all that you're working on. I'll ask now Anja to stop the live stream, and you can stay on